In 2022, South Korean director Park Chan-wook collaborated with Chinese actress Tang Wei for the film Decision to Leave. This marked Tang Wei's second collaboration with a Korean director. Her first was Late Autumn, whose director Kim Tae-yong later became her husband. Tang Wei rose to international fame with An Lee's Last Caution, a role that sparked widespread attention, not only in China but also in South Korea. After marrying Kim and relocating to South Korea, she continued to build a strong cultural and artistic connection with the country. This deep-rooted presence in Korea laid a natural foundation for her collaboration with Park Chan-wook and made her casting in Decision to Leave feel both surprising and inevitable. Decision to Leave received impressive ratings, 94% from critics and 84% from general audiences on Rotten Tomatoes. On Douban, it holds a solid 7.6 out of 10. By all accounts, these are strong numbers, even bordering on excellent. But to be frank, if you are someone who watches films for the plot, or if you were drawn in by its genre labels like mystery or thrill or crime, you are likely to be disappointed. And if you walk into this film with no prior understanding of Park Chan-wook or Tang Wei, you're probably going to be disappointed as well. As Park Chan-wook surely implies through a character in The Handmaiden, he's just an old pervert who enjoys telling indecent stories. There are rumors that this film was tailor-made for Tang Wei. Well, I haven't found solid confirmation of that. But one thing is certain. Tang Wei isn't just central to the narrative, she is the narrative. The entire film feels as though it was constructed around her character. From the way the story unfolds to how the emotional beats are framed, everything seems designed with her in mind. The fact that Park chose her suggests he had a strong vision, not just for the film, but for the female lead specifically. On some level, she might have been the only possible choice. She has one of those faces, rich with story, beautiful, dangerous, innocent, and layered with complexity. Decision to Leave may not be a great crime or detective film, but from a genre perspective, I consider it an exceptional love story. For a long time, I believed that plot was the most important element in cinema. But that belief began to erode after experiencing the Evangelion series and John Wick. What truly determines the quality of a film, I've come to realize, is whether it is consciously made, whether there is thought behind it. The more intentional the filmmaking, the more likely it is to produce something truly powerful. And there's just so much to think about when making a film. In NHK's 2021 documentary about Hideaki Anno and Evangelion Thrice Upon a Time, you can clearly see how every detail, every frame, every line of dialogue was carefully shaped by Anno himself. He thought through everything, obsessively pursuing a sense of rightness. American television has also produced remarkably well-crafted shows. Take my personal favorites, Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Both are intensely conscious works, where every frame, every line, every transition feels deeply considered. Of course, factory-line productions can also achieve high quality and widespread cultural impact. But when it comes to artistic merit, there's usually a noticeable gap. As for Decision to Leave, it doesn't quite reach the top tier in terms of plot. Both the character development and narrative structure fall short under close scrutiny. But even so, its flaws are far outweighed by its strength. What truly elevates the film is its audiovisual artistry, its masterful composition, hauntingly beautiful score, and exquisite tension in the emotional dynamic between the two leads. As one Rotten Tomatoes review perfectly put it, if Decision to Leave isn't quite on the same level as Park Chan-wook's masterpieces, this romantic thriller is still a remarkable achievement by any other metric. In this video, I want to explore three core questions. When it comes to love, what's the relationship between the brain, the body, and the heart? The two leads never even slept together, so how did they fall that deeply in love? Does the female lead's ending count as a narrative letdown? To start, let's establish a simple conceptual model to help us better understand the emotional dynamic in this story. I believe that, if we simplify things a bit, each person is made up of three departments: the brain, the body, and the heart. The brain represents logic, execution, and defense mechanism. The heart stands for desire and authentic emotions. The body embodies vitality and impulse. Most of our decisions are made through a collaboration of these three systems, especially at the beginning of a relationship. The brain, body, and heart often move forward together. Of course, each person is dominated by one more than the others. People ruled by the brain often seem guarded and efficient. Those led by the heart come across as emotional but vibrant, and the body-driven tend to be full of energy and restlessness. Now, with the model in mind, let's return to Decision to Leave. When Song Lei first meets Detective He Zhen, the emotional playing field is already uneven. She's the widow in a suspicious death case. He's the investigator assigned to uncover the truth. Though she doesn't plan their encounter, she quickly senses his emotional vulnerability and begins to lean into it. When Song Lei realizes that He Zhen has developed feelings for her, she begins to feed that affection with deliberate precision. She knows how to comfort him, how to say what he wants to hear. From the beginning, Song Lei operates with clarity. She understands that being loved by the man investigating her could shape the balance of power. She doesn't force anything, but she nudges, gently, consistently, and always in control. While Song Lei stays calculated and composed, He Zhen enters the relationship with open vulnerability. After Song Lei mentions that Korean isn't her first language, He Zhen gently tells his partner to speak slowly and clearly, just so she won't feel lost. When their interrogation runs long, he orders high-end sushi for her, not out of obligation, but out of care. Later, when he uncovers evidence that points directly to her, he doesn't turn it in. Instead, he sends it to her by text, like her lover asking for an explanation. Even when he's certain of her guilty, he doesn't walk away. He destroys the evidence, meets her face to face, and asks nothing in return, just a trace of honesty. All the while, Song Lei records their conversation, quietly preparing for what may come next. All of this points to one thing. The dynamic of the relationship begins with unequal intentions. One person is all in with emotion, the other is leading with strategy. Song Lei doesn't fall in love at first. Her feelings emerge only later, when her defenses are worn down. He Zhen, on the other hand, is a seasoned detective with a complicated inner world. The film's biggest flaw may lie in the imbalance of character depth. On the surface, Song Lei appears to be more complex and dangerous character. But her backstory, killing her mother and later her husband, is presented more as plot devices than emotional insights. We're not given enough to understand how those events shaped her. She remains a mystery, possibly even to the director himself. By contrast, He Zhen is the more fully realized character. The film opens with him lamenting the lack of homicide cases. It quickly reveals his insomnia, subtle signs of a man running on empty. His life is defined by a quiet void. This carefully crafted foundation makes it believable that he would fall for someone like Song Lei. After all, it can't just be because he's lusting after a beautiful woman. There has to be more. To Heijin, Songlei arrives like a gift, perfectly wrapped, irresistible. He sees her as a cure to his emptiness, and once he lets her in, he never puts up defenses again. Even when helping her cover up evidence of a crime, he does so with complete emotional surrender. At that moment, Songlei is secretly recording their conversation, just in case. His vulnerability collides head-on with her self-protection, and in that crash, her emotional walls finally crack. Even 13 months later, when they meet again under the shadow of another suspicious death, Heijin still lets his guard down. Songlei is on Chudou Mountain, crying out her mother's final wish to scatter her ashes off a cliff. Heijin calls her just as she's about to do it, and ends up joining her. Together, they stand at the edge of the cliff. He knows, rationally, professionally, that he has likely killed again. But as he takes the urn from her and releases the ashes into the wind, he stands with his back turned to her, on the very edge of the mountain. And in that moment, his brain simply goes offline. All it takes is her presence, her sincerity, the softness in her voice, and the walls he's been holding up just collapse. What's left is the body, the instinct, and the heart. That's a pattern with Heijin. Whenever she shows him a glimpse of tenderness, he stops thinking and starts feeling. And it's never in a grand, dramatic way. It's quiet, devastating, and total. That's the power of his love. It overrides logic, even survival instinct. Songlei, who's always relies on the brain, finds herself powerless against someone who truly leads with the heart. Heijin isn't lacking in intelligence, but when it comes to Songlei, it's as if his rational faculties shut down completely. The tension between her defenses and his sincerity is what fuels their emotional dynamic. And that's exactly why Decision to Leave succeeded as a love story. The hardest thing about portraying romance on screen is getting the tension right. Too much, and it feels melodramatic. Too little, and the love feels unearned. But here, everything falls into place. You don't question why they love each other, you simply believe it. That natural inevitability, that sense of course they would, is what separates a great love story from a forgettable one. When discussing East Asian societies, it's hard to avoid one word: repression. Director Ang Lee once referenced China's 5,000 years of sexual repression in his movie The Wedding Banquet. But repression of sex is, at its core, repression of desire, and perhaps even more deeply, a repression of our longing for love. If Decision to Leave were a classic Hollywood film, it probably wouldn't make much narrative sense that the two leads fall so deeply in love without even sleeping together, only sharing a single kiss. But in the world of Korean dramas, this setup is familiar. Even contemporary K-dramas still echo the style of series from 10 or 20 years ago, where the couple dances around their feelings for the entire runtime, finally confirming their love with a kiss in the final scene. East Asians are skilled at building functional realities. We're good at forming partnerships, raising child, fulfilling duties, but we're not as good at falling in love. It's fair to say that East Asia is a perfect soil for growing platonic love. In East Asian storytelling, the emotional climax of romance comes from figuring the other person out. It's not that we don't crave physical connection, we do, but compared to sex, love is the greater luxury. What we truly seek in relationships is to be loved, to be seen, to be caught when we fall, to be cared for. Those needs take precedence over physical intimacy. In many Western films, sex often appears as a natural progression of affection, sometimes even pure animal instinct. But for those of us raised in East Asian cultures, this kind of animal sex may be easy to understand but hard to embody. It's not that we're incapable of it, but we tend to fuse sex with a host of emotional complexities. Sex itself is never the dish. It's not something to savor on its own. It's merely a raw ingredient. Base, unworthy, and hard to swallow. It has to be prepared, cooked, seasoned, and layered with meaning before it can be served. That's why Lust Caution is considered a masterpiece. The film features 3 pivotal sex scenes, none of which exist in Eileen Chang's original novella, but they drive the entire narrative arc. These scenes peel back the veil of repression, revealing a unique East Asian dilemma. Sex is not allowed to exist on its own. It must serve something. It must be justified. In this cultural soil, true animal sex rarely grows. Instead, we obsess over love and the experience of being loved. Compared to skin hunger, what we truly suffer from is emotional hunger. For those raised in a lifetime of self-restraint, it's fair to say the brain is our most powerful sex organ. Many viewers express dissatisfaction with Song Lei's tragic end, and understandably so. No one enjoys watching a smart, capable, decisive woman fall into the old trope of dying for love. It feels like decades of feminist progress are being swiped aside in one dramatic wave. But on another narrative thread, the director gives the male lead's wife a conclusion that feminist audiences might find deeply satisfying. She's the one who has the courage to choose a different life, living with a colleague without looking back. It's clear the film doesn't shy away from depicting women who take control of their lives. In fact, it seems to celebrate them. So why does Song Lei have to die? To answer that, we have to look at her in contrast to the detective's wife. His wife is grounded. She's anchored in reality. As a nuclear safety officer, she deals in risk management and stability. She cares about her husband's smoking habits, about their long-distance marriage, about how often they're intimate. Everything she worries about is rooted in life itself, and that's not a bad thing. People like her are the ones who endure. And endurance, in human terms, is everything. The film treats her character with a quiet admiration, and rightfully so. Song Lei, on the other hand, doesn't lack the ability to survive. What she lacks is the desire to keep living. She and He Jin are drawn to each other because both are searching for what it means to truly feel alive. He Jin relies on the constant adrenaline of criminal investigations to feel something real. Song Lei, by contrast, has never fully known what it means to live for herself. Her life has been a series of duties, never choices. She trained as a caregiver for her mother, across the borders for family obligations, married one man for legal protection and another to erase her past. You could even say one of her greatest strengths is how easily she lets go. For someone who lives with nothing to hold on to, courage can come without resistance. When He Jin first leaves her, there's a telling moment. Her gaze lingers on her mother's urn, where 4 capsules, tucked away long ago, still remain. Whenever her world feels untethered, Song Lei's instinct is to retreat inward, to that quiet place where everything could simply stop. Most people go through life clinging to the default of survival, occasionally brushing against darker thoughts. Song Lei, it seems, starts from the opposite place. She lives in stillness and only occasionally finds life sharp and worth holding on to. So yes, her ending may not be feminist, but it certainly doesn't cater to male fantasy either. For He Jin, her death is no happy ending. It's a devastating loss, one that erodes his own will to live. And once a person starts questioning the meaning of life, they're on dangerous ground. Most people don't have a great anchor to hold them in place, and the truth is, the will to live is far more precious than the ability to live. That's why I've always loved Gone with the Wind. The moment Scarlett swears never to go hungry again, with the land of terror behind her, is unforgettable, because it's driven by the pure force of survival. Song Lei has none of that. She drifts like duckweed, floating wherever life takes her, and sinking when she can flow no longer. Her strength is soft, receptive, but undeniable resolute. And it's that quiet decisiveness, that graceful surrender to fate, that makes her such a hauntingly powerful character.